Hey there folks, my name is Peter. Welcome back to the channel. On my most recent video, I did a full service on the Craftsman zero-turn lawnmower. If you haven't seen that video, go ahead and check it out. By the time I got done with that job, it was pretty late in the day and I just didn't have the time nor the energy to clean off my workbench. And I like to have it clean after every single job. A lot of YouTube commenters will suggest that if somebody has clean tools, it means that they don't use them. I would of course disagree with that sentiment. I think if you clean them and they're clean, it doesn't necessarily mean you don't use them. You don't know if the person uses them or not. In my case, I want to make sure that everything stays clean. And what I thought would be interesting about this video is I could talk through every single tool that I used for that project. And remember, we did engine oil, oil filter, spark plugs, fuel filter, air filter, and new blades. So we're gonna get everything put away, we're gonna get it cleaned, and then for stuff that's available online, I'll have links in the description below. For the snap-on stuff, I'll try to have the model numbers and whatnot as well, so that you can check it out if you're interested. As always, if you're into tools, EDC, or do-it-yourself projects, be sure to subscribe to the channel. It, of course, helps out a great deal. First things first, so I don't remember exactly why I bought this, but the only thing that I use this for, this is the Ryobi 1/2" impact, is for getting the lawnmower blades off of the lawnmower. I don't have like a big breaker bar. The biggest 1/2" ratchet that I have is from Husky, and I just cannot get those things to budge with just this, so I have to rely on this. We do torque them down to 80 foot-pounds, so that's probably why I can't get it off. I'll talk about the torque wrench here in a minute, which I got on Amazon. The Ryobi, I mean, it's held up, I just don't use it that much, so this is not a glowing recommendation, it's just to say that for my use case, it seems to work. Yours, it may or may not. Truthfully, if I was gonna have a impact gun that I used on a regular basis, I'm probably going with either Milwaukee or Snap-on, but for me and what I need to use this for at the moment, it has held up just fine. Now I have my toolbox turned, so all my drawers are right in front of me, so I'll put stuff away as we go. I know some folks have been asking for a toolbox tour. I will certainly be recording that tour at some point in the near future. There's a few more things that I want to get in this toolbox before I do that, and certainly we will do it before or if we end up with our Snap-on 84-inch Epic. Next, let's cover some pliers that we made use of yesterday. So interestingly, I have two pairs of these Snap-on LN46 ACF because I originally thought that one of them was faulty, so they sent me a new one, but then they never asked me to send back the old one, so I didn't. But when I was getting the cotter pins off, so there's 3 cotter pins on the Craftsman zero-turn, you've got one on either side and one in the front, and then they're into these pins that hold the deck in place. Again, I don't really think that they're called cotter pins, but I don't know the more proper name for them, so if you do, please let me know. But effectively, I found that having 2 pairs of pliers made the job a little bit easier. We basically were squeezing down on one end and pulling with the other. So that's what I use these for. Throughout the day yesterday, my hands were, as you might expect, somewhat greasy. So we're just gonna wipe down the handles with our new crocodile cloths. So I picked these up at Home Depot. I found though that they do sell them on Amazon, so I'll have a link in the description below. And they seem to work well for your hands, your face, and of course your tools. So we'll just wipe down the handles and then I'll give it a spritz of WD-40, just wipe the top because obviously we don't want these things to rust. And then these pliers, these are the Snap-on FlankJaws. So really they're more for turning bolts, but they do have the Talon grip at the end, so they can sort of serve as like your typical slip joint, if you will. And what I use these for was getting the clips off of the fuel filter. Now I don't have a pair of Snap-on slip joints, like just your typical tapered slip joint. I only have these FlankJaws, and I actually got these the other day. So if I didn't have these, I would have found a different way to get those clips detached, but I found that they work really well. And at some point in the future, I do want to pick up a proper set of slip joints. Next, just because it's sitting right in front of me, so this is our Snap-on 3/8 ratchet flex head. This is actually the first Snap-on ratchet that I ever purchased. I think I did this as part of an unboxing on the channel, so check that video out if you're interested. I mean, and what is there to really say about Snap-on ratchets? Even the folks that despise Snap-on, I think generally believe that their ratchets are pretty good, so who am I to disagree? What I use this for was in conjunction with our Astro Tools spark plug socket. So this is a 5/8 magnetic spark plug socket. I unboxed this on the channel as part of one of my Amazon unboxing videos, and I found that it works super well. Now in this instance, there was 2 spark plugs total. They were pretty easy to get to, but even then, having this wobble was actually really nice because you could undo the spark plug with your hand placed basically perfectly relative to the fastener. How about that magnet, huh? Right on there. So I found that to be really useful. In the kit, which I have right here, you also get a couple more sizes, and then the 5/8 also comes in this extra long as well. I had mentioned on that other video that Snap-on does sell a magnetic spark plug socket set. I think it's $500. So for something that we're gonna use quite sparingly, right? I didn't want to spend that much money. This is $50 on Amazon, which is great. I will put it in the box. And in terms of spark plug removal, I mean, we've got 2 on the zero turn, we've got 1 on the Kawasaki Mule, we've got, I think 4 on our boat. So I'm not going to use this thing very often, and I'm happy to just pay $50 for the privilege. I found that the magnet works super well, both when you're getting it off and getting it on. It stays exactly where you would expect. There's no play or wobble, which is quite nice. So definitely a kit that I would recommend. Certainly I haven't tried it on like a big truck or getting deep down in a well to trying to get spark plugs out of a car engine, but stay tuned, because if we end up with that project car after all, we may just do that. So because this box is in our way, why don't we talk about our ratcheting screwdrivers here. So I mentioned on a recent unboxing when I talked about this 1/4" shank that if I could only have 1 screwdriver, it's probably gonna be the Snap-on ratcheting. And I stand by that. In fact, this stubby handle is something I probably use more than any other Snap-on tool that I bought. I just love it so much. Most stubbies, I feel ergonomically, don't really fit well, at least in my hand. And this, I find the opposite. It does fit very well. In this case, when I was taking off some of the plastic covers, there's some screws that are kind of hard to get to. This was really nice for that, because you can put your 1/4" socket on here, right? So this is how it was set up for that job, and I found that it worked really, really well. I didn't dig into the bigger handle at all yesterday, but I don't know that I've ever wiped this down, so we'll give it a little refresh as well before we get all of this put away. At this point in our ratcheting screwdriver set from Snap-on, we have 4 of the, I believe 5 shanks, so the other one will go right here, and that's the flexible. We have that on order. We'll pick it up at our next unboxing. And then here is where the bit set would go. So when you buy this kit on Amazon, it comes with everything you see here, plus the flexible, plus the bit set, and I think it's a little over $500. The bits are expensive, so I have not yet made the leap. I have plenty of bits. So far, the Snap-on bits that I do have, like this is the number 2 Phillips, have worked out great, but I don't know that I need to spend all that money on just a few more bits, but I am a completionist, so there is a world in which we end up picking that up in the future. Next, why don't we talk about our torque wrench, since it's sitting there right in front of us. So the funny thing about this torque wrench is that I used to think it didn't work. It turns out I'm just too weak to get it to turn up to the number of foot-pounds that I needed. So as always, when you store these, right, so this is, I've already done this, but just unscrew this all the way, make sure this is loose. You don't want the spring under any tension while it's in storage. For the blades, we have to torque them down to 80 foot-pounds, and when I'd done this in the past, I could never hear it click. Well, it turns out the reason I couldn't hear it click is I wasn't applying enough force. Yesterday, I finally found the strength to pull this thing with enough force to get it to click. That was actually super satisfying, and ultimately, I'm gonna start to change my opinion on this torque wrench. This is the only torque wrench that I own. Truthfully, when I bought it, I didn't know what I was doing. And you could argue I still don't know what I'm doing. But nonetheless, when I purchased this, you know, in 1/2 inch, I didn't think to myself, you know, how often am I really gonna use this? I just thought, well, I have a torque wrench now. That being said, on the boat, I would also use something like this, but generally I find that if I'm changing that propeller, it's because I've hit something and I'm changing it in the water, so I don't generally deal with this, but that was another reason that I decided to pick it up. Now the socket that we have on here is a 15/16, and this was one that I got from my grandfather. This is a Bonnie, so it is made in USA. Unfortunately, it's a 12-point, and these are 6-point fasteners. So I texted my Snap-on guy and said, hey, I just want a single socket. He said, that's not a problem. So I'm gonna pick up the Snap-on 15/16 1/2 inch 6-point. I'm gonna get it in both chrome and impact, and its sole job in this lifetime will be to take off and replace the blades on the Craftsman Zero Turn. And of course, this Tekton, like I said, I got it on Amazon, comes in this nice blow molded case where we will put it until either next year, or if we want to torque down the lug nuts in our car, we could do that as well. One question I have for folks watching this video is, I know that if you buy a torque wrench from Snap-on, right, they have the calibration system right on the truck, so you could always bring them your wrench and then they could recalibrate it for you. How do you recalibrate off-brand stuff like this? If you all know, please enlighten me. So this isn't a tool, but these are the old spark plugs from yesterday. Truthfully, they weren't that bad, and I think you probably could have gotten at least another year out of them. But the manual does say you should be replacing these things every year. And what was interesting is that the model number on here is different from the model number in the manual. So I don't know why I decided to purchase these ones last time, but this time I replaced the spark plugs with what the manual said. So I think it was a 491055, something like that. But nonetheless, probably hold on to these, and then next year when I do this replacement again, I'll just throw these away finally. And this is the plastic bag that the new ones came in. So again, in our socket and ratchet, this is our, this is our 13 millimeter. I think we were using this for, there's a single bolt attaching basically the foot plate to the rest of the system, and you can use a 13 millimeter to get that off. Now, one thing I realized midway through this project is that most of these fasteners are actually SAE, and I'm of course using metric sockets on them. Now, I think when you're using 6-point and you have snap-ons which get a really tight fit, you can maybe get away with stuff like that, but certainly I wouldn't recommend it. Later, our 10 millimeters around here somewhere, this is actually a 3/8, and so I was having to use this box end offset wrench to get some of the plastic panels off of the deck. Turns out this is actually a 3/8, not 10 mil. Pretty close, but I'm using our box end wrench to get us the rest of the way home. In terms of lighting, if I was only gonna buy one Snap-on light, it might just be this neck light. I think it's super useful. The fact that these are adjustable is really nice. I haven't taken them off too much and used them as magnets, but that's an option that you have available to you. I know some folks wear them up here, which for me, I don't use them like this that often. I know that Snap-on actually just came out with a brand new version of this, which is meant to go up here because it has little tapered plastic pieces to conform to your ear a little bit better. But I basically had these on the entire day yesterday. I wasn't working in like a super dark space, but for like the fuel filter, oil filter, and spark plugs, they're on the engine, and that's within the sort of roll cage, and it's a little hard to see, at least in this garage. So I love having these on at all times. I'll get these charged and we'll put them back on the wall. But like I said, if I was only gonna buy one Snap-on light, it's probably gonna be these. Rounding out the sockets that we used yesterday, of course we used a 10 millimeter because we use 10 millimeter for pretty much everything. Like I said, again, these are mostly SAE, so I don't know what the correct size is, but the 10 millimeter seemed to work. I was using this again for those plastic panels. And then our other non-Snap-on socket that we used, which actually this Husky 13 mil 12-point. So the reason I wanted to use a 12-point specifically was on the oil drain plug, it's a square, basically a 4-sided fastener. And I was always taught that for those types of fasteners, you can use 12-point sockets very cleanly. I don't have a lot of 12-point sockets. Of course, the quarter-inch set that I bought from Snap-on was just 6 points, but this is probably another instance where I'll pick up a Snap-on 12-point 13 just for doing that oil drain plug again in the future. Now, another must-have tool when I was doing this project is this, and I still don't know how to pronounce this all these years later, Morakniv. This is, I'm assuming, still available on Amazon. That's where I bought it, and I will have a link for all of you because I strongly recommend this. The use cases for this type of tool are pretty much limitless. I'm using it mostly underneath the deck for cleaning off all of that grass that had built up. All this loose stuff out of here. Now, I think realistically, you should be doing this a little bit more often than I'm doing it because as this grass sticks here, right, it's got moisture in it, you can rust out the bottom of this machine. So that being said, this thing is never outside unless it's cutting the grass, so it's stored inside, obviously all winter and whatnot. So, and the reality is, this is too much work, at least for me, to do it any more often than I already do. But just know that, especially if you cut your grass wet, which I try and always avoid if I can,
you can rust out the bottom of your machine if you're not careful.
But I have found this thing to be infinitely useful. Like I said, I do have a set of carbide scrapers from Snap-on order, but for stuff like this, I would still prefer this tool. The handle is fantastic on this thing. It actually fits my hand perfectly, and it has a stop here and a stop there, so you can always stay right on it, which is important because if you're really scraping, you don't want to overshoot the handle and cut your hand. So it comes in a nice little sheath. Clicks in there. It does have a belt clip. I usually keep this in my Vito Pro Pack, which I did a full video on if you want to check it out. This is actually made in Sweden, so super cool. Very, very high quality. It does have a sticker on here, which I never realized until just now, so we'll probably have to get that removed. I just did a YouTube short explaining my process there with some heat and some Goo Gone, but nonetheless, a tool that I very, very strongly recommend. Before we put this away, let's get a little WD-40 on there and just wipe it down. One thing that you can never have enough of, and I did use on this project, are these magnetic trays. This is just a Pittsburgh, so a Harbor Freight tray. Snap-on does have some trays, but and what's nice about those is that they're flexible, so you can crush them down when they're not in use. I may pick up some of those in the future, but for now these have worked just fine. I keep them on the side of the toolbox, and then I use them just for holding all the fasteners. Even if you don't need the magnet, I would just recommend you have some sort of tray to hold everything in, because there's not that many fasteners on the zero turn, but there's enough where you want to keep them all in one place. Like there's 3 of those cotter pins, 3 of those bolts, 6 screws, plus 3 for the blades, plus another one for there is, I already lost count, 15. So again, if you're tearing down an engine, 15 is not that many, but for this project it's kind of a lot, so I would just recommend having something like this. And if I can find something comparable on Amazon, I'll put a link to it. Now, I was super excited to make use of this yesterday, but unfortunately it didn't really do much for us. It's not a statement on the quality of this product, more so just I think that this will be better for us when we do like the oil change on the boat, because that oil filter I know for sure will leak everywhere, and actually they build in a catch for the oil that comes out of the oil filter. But nonetheless, this is one of those flexible funnels, so we can just roll it up back to the way that it came and put it back in its box here. I picked this up on Amazon. I was actually gonna do an Amazon unboxing with this stuff, but I ended up opening so much of it for yesterday's project that the unboxing kind of went away. If you're in the market for a flexible funnel, this one is from EWK. Excellent working experience. Interesting. I'm not sure where this is made. It was relatively cheap. And of course, there's a lot of different use cases. I wanted to try to use it yesterday underneath the oil filter. I just couldn't get it close enough so that it made a difference, but now I have it for the future. All right, just a couple more things, then we're done. We'll clean off our workbench and move on to the next item. So we'll talk a little bit about some cleaning supplies. I just bought this UTV ATV wash at my power sports dealer when I picked up some front final gear case oil for the UTV. I'll be doing a video about that. I use this a little bit on the lawnmower. I'm not sure the degree to which it really did anything. And in fact, I hate the spray bottle, but this is from Liquid Performance. Supposedly it's non-corrosive and biodegradable. The guy at the power sports store recommended it, so I'm happy to have it. I'll use it more on the mule, but it seemed like it worked well on the zero turn. The WD-40 silicone, I used on basically all the plastic parts. I also sprayed the bottom of the deck to try and maybe help grease from sticking. I've watched a lot of videos on like different ceramic treatments you can do, and it just seems like they generally don't work, but they're expensive and time consuming, so this was easy enough. And then for my seat, and then again, more of like plastic components, I would clean them with this and then go over with the silicone. This is the Chemical Guys Total Interior Cleaner and Protectant. So I use this mostly when detailing my cars, but it seemed like it worked well for this case as well. And then lastly, what I found useful recently is just having a pen and paper with me whenever I'm working on a project. In this case, I wrote down all the tools that I used. Of course, I can reference this in the future, but I also wanted it for the purpose of this video, and this pen is nothing interesting. So pen and paper, write stuff down, have a plan, you'll be okay. And then before we can officially start on our next project, I like to take my little brush here and just get all the excess stuff on our workbench put away. I actually 3D printed this dustpan, so it is exactly for this purpose, and it seemingly works pretty well. And then last things last, just a little bit of Windex and a paper towel to make sure the workbench is nice and clean for our next project. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the very next video.